Okay, let's bring Kevin Rachlin into the conversation. He is the U.S. Director for the Alliance for Middle East Peace, and he joins us now from Arlington, Virginia. Thank you so much for joining us today, Kevin.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
So, first of all, let's start with the situation on the ground where you are. Are people getting restless since we don't have a result yet? Or has everyone accepted that, Joe Biden might be close to victory?
I think restless is the right word right now. I think we're all just kind of having to do something which, we don't normally have to do in presidential elections, which is being patient and just kind of waiting to see what's happening and just waiting for the votes to actually come in. Already right now, we're seeing so many of the races tightening up, be it in Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, or Pennsylvania. But I think, right now on, just on the New York Times, it's 253 to 214 with 71 electoral votes still outstanding. And I think you're going to see some challenges coming in. But the fact that, Wisconsin and Michigan both flipped blue in 2020 does speak volumes of where the electorate is going. And I think that, people haven't made a decision. There are some people on the Biden side that are very positive and thinking that this will, this kind of signifies the end of the race with those two being called and how close things are in Arizona and Nevada. But I do know, just based on the president's recent tweets as well as his statements over the last couple of days, that you're going to continuously see challenges in certain areas.
So let's zoom out for a second. We just watched a piece about the intense coverage coming from the Middle Eastern networks about the election. How much would the winner of this election actually affect the situation or the status quo in the region, especially just on the heels of the Abraham Accords?
So I think, you have to take a step back and kind of look at what has happened in the last 4 years in terms of how this administration has affected the region. And I think that, if people are expecting, Vice President Biden to immediately withdraw the embassy from Tel Aviv, from Jerusalem and move it to Tel Aviv, or, recant on the Golan Heights announcements, I don't think that's going to happen. But I think this is a very different individual. Vice President Biden has over 40 years in foreign policy experience, and he has, Israel is very near and dear to his heart. So I think you're going to see him jumping in with both feet and trying to address the situation quickly. But I think, in terms of the status quo, things will be kind of stable at, kind of maintain itself for the first 6 months or so, just simply because we're dealing with a pandemic. And I know the vice president has made it very clear that he wants to address that at home before anything else happens.
Do you think that Joe Biden would try to bring the Palestinians back to the negotiating table after they were sort of alienated by the Trump administration?
Absolutely. This is something that his surrogates have said many times, that and one of their critiques of the president was that they did ostracize the Palestinians, be it closing the PLO office here in Washington, D.C., to cutting off development and humanitarian aid to NGOs operating in the West Bank and Gaza, and really just kind of doing a maximum pressure campaign on the Palestinians. And I think the vice president understands the importance of diplomacy. He understands the importance of peace, both to the Israeli population as well as to the Palestinian population. And so he is, you can't just make peace with one party. He's going to re-engage both sides. And I know he's already made a commitment to restart development and humanitarian aid to the West Bank and Gaza to get those critical supplies in as needed. And, and from my point of view and from, the Alliance for Middle East Peace's point of view, one of the things he should be doing and looking at is really re-engaging civil society on the ground in the West Bank, because so much damage has been done to the relationship between the Palestinian, not just the relationship between the leadership of the Palestinians, but actually the trust on the ground between the Palestinian people and the American population. So he's going to have to make a significant push to really engage that population.
And, what about Trump's peace plan, the deal of the century? Is that something that Biden could potentially continue with, or is he going to start from scratch?
I think, one of the things that, I think one of the few things that the president and the vice president agree on at this point is the idea of a two-state solution. I think that the question is how to get there. Vice President Biden has made it very clear that any peace process has to be with both parties. It can't just be negotiated with one side. In the Trump peace plan, that is exactly what happened. It was essentially a one-sided negotiation. And so coming back into that negotiation process and bringing in Mahmoud Abbas and others in the Palestinian leadership, he's going to have to start over. And I'm not saying start from 2014, because I think that the reality on the ground and with the population between both Israelis and Palestinians has changed tremendously. And that's one of the reasons why I say constantly, you have to re-engage civil society and kind of gain that trust back. One of the things that we're actually talking about and working on here is creating an international fund for Israeli-Palestinian peace to grow civil society and create that constituency for peace, not only in the West Bank and Gaza, but also continually to grow that constituency for peace in Israel itself.
Right. So we'll have to wait and see, but hopefully we'll know maybe even in the coming hours who's going to be the winner of this election. Kevin Rachlin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.